welcome back, everybody. Hey, welcome back. Hey, welcome back. Welcome back, everybody. It's time once again for Meet Our Community, the Hispanic business community here in Orange County. Powered by the Orange County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio, streaming live from our studios here at the University of California, Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center. And today, well, we've got some royalty in the room here. John Gutierrez, start us off.
Yes, we have another special guest today. Welcome, everybody, to our community podcast show powered by the Orange County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I'm your host, Senior Vice President here at the Chamber. I'm so excited to have what I call a community leader, of course, a professional artist, the Godfather of hip hop, Mr. Mellow Man Ace. Welcome, sir, to our show.
I'm not the Godfather of hip hop. That would be Cool Herc. I'm just the Godfather of the Latino version of it all.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on our show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, John.
I know it's quite a drive for you, right? I think you're out in the LA area.
No, I'm actually in Hacienda Heights.
So not too bad?
No, not too bad.
Okay, not too bad. Yeah. So, like we had talked about before the show, one of the things we like to do on our show is have you tell the story of obviously how you became this superstar, singer, entertainer, but most importantly, if you can share your story of your childhood, of just tell us a little bit about you and your family, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no doubt. Born in 1967 under communist rule Cuba, Fidel Castro taking everything in sight. My parents lived a very humble life. We lived at our grandfather's house. I remember when I was born, a little clinic down the way there in Pinar del Rio, Cuba. The dirt floors at that time. At that house, we lived there. My dad, who was a school teacher at the time, and we're talking about 1967, 68, 69, 1970. He wanted to get have a better life for his kids. And I give him so much love and respect and admiration because he really could have just came here by himself and left the rest of us back. Instead, he applies for a visa and it just keeps getting denied. Now, the thing about at that time, the other thing was, aside from seeing the Soviet tanks on the street and all that kind of stuff, during the
you remember seeing all this?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was just 4 years old seeing these things. You had to have children if you wanted to get off the island or get on these things that were called the flights of liberty. Los vuelos de la libertad.
Los vuelos de la libertad.
Yes, this was before the 1980s Mariel boat lift.
Okay.
This is 1968, 69, 70, 71, in that time period. So if you didn't agree with Fidel Castro's ideologies and things in the way he was taking the country, he gave people a chance to get off the island. My father applies for visas that are always denied, but at the same time, we keep having children. He keeps having children with my mother, and it gets tougher and tougher and tougher to live in a third world country, and you just keep creating more mouths to feed. So what happened was the government took my father out of his school teacher detail and put him to work in the sugarcane fields and in the sewers. And they would try to break his will and say, why would you want to go to America? These are the kind of jobs you're going to get. But my dad had an ace in the hole in the sense of another buddy who had already come in 1969.
Interesting, okay.
And who started working at Delta Airlines here at LAX, who kept telling my dad, don't give in. That's the same thing they did to me. I have a great job here now at Delta. I told my bosses about you. They're going to give you a job as well when you come.
Wow.
So my dad's never breaks his will, right? Now, the other thing, the second part of that was you had to have children in order to get off the island. So when my older sister was born, her number does not hit the Cuban lottery. Basically, I think it's more like your Cuban Social Security number when you're born, right?
Oh.
My brother Sendog, a lot of you might know from a rap group called Cypress Hill.
Mm-hmm.
He's born, and his number doesn't hit the lotto
Wow.
to get off. When I'm born third, my number hits the lotto to get the entire family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, immediate family off the island. Nobody wants to come other than our immediate six. With the shirts on our backs, we were given our papers to leave in 1971,
Wow.
where we were claimed in Miami by a uncle of my mother's. In Miami, we're given, the opportunity to pick where we wanted to live. New York, Chicago, Miami, or Los Angeles. And so my parents were like, well, Miami's a lot like Cuba, and we don't like tornadoes since a long time ago.
Exactly.
What happens in New York and Chicago? And they would tell me, well, it snows here about 3 months out of the year. It gets really cold, 0 below. And they're like, we've never heard of that. So what happens in California? And they were, the government tells them, well, the ground shakes about every 20 years. And they're like, the ground shakes. They never heard of an earthquake before,
They really never heard of an earthquake.
From a third world country, you know what I mean?
That's
it's
interesting.
like maybe they.
Yeah.
But according to the way they tell the stories, like we never heard of a.
Yes. Wow.
So they chose Los Angeles, and we moved to the Miramonte area of. Gosh, the Florence neighborhood, down off of Florence Avenue and Miramonte Street. We rented 2 rooms from an elder lady who happened to be a part of the church that my parents elected to go to. And then from there, we finally were able to get a 2-bedroom apartment in Southgate, California in 1974. And so there's 6 of us. We got a 2-bedroom apartment. Of course, mom and dad had a room. And because, they were girls, my 2 sisters got a room. Me and Sendog had to share the couch in the living room, sofa bed. But it was a family. We were growing. We came from Cuba. The 1970s, I think, for me, personally, was the toughest decade of my existence in the United States, I think, because of the confusion of being my skin complexion but speaking perfect Spanish. And having to learn English in ESL classes and stuff like that. Once you get to learn the language and get across the barrier, you start to understand that kids are picking on you, and they're pointing out your raggedy shoes and your secondhand pants and all these kind of things. And I think that part of it was the toughest part, growing up where you were too black to be Latino and too Latino to be black.
Wow.
And I think that for me had to be the hardest part. Now, remember, I don't have any cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents. They all stayed back in Cuba. And so if we got into arguments or disagreements and fights on the street, there's nobody to call on. It's us. And we had our backs against the wall a lot. My brother and I fought a lot because we had to defend our sisters. So we were very poor. We were poor, but we had an apartment now, and my parents started to save up for a house. And that would come about 8-9 years later. They've really worked their butts off, and they were able to buy a 3-bedroom home on a street that would become legendary, Cypress Avenue, later on.
Wow.
And that's where I began to hone my skills as a MC, as a rapper, and listening to music that would change the course of my life, because my father was breeding me to become a baseball player. And when I chose music, which made more sense because the entire family from Cuba was musicians, all the way back to my grandfather, who was the Cuban military orchestra band leader, played the stand-up bass and did all the music. 3 of my uncles, 17 of my cousins, you name it, all musicians. Still playing, one uncle still playing in Havana to this day. And so...
But your dad wanted you to be a baseball player.
He wanted us to stay away from music because I think he felt that, watching his father struggle and only being able to make so much money a month, playing gigs in 1955 Cuba, 1960 Cuba, it wasn't a very lucrative endeavor at all. Not there. Many musicians came from Cuba. We all know this. Afro-Cuban music is one of the most respected music genres of all time. We know this, but if you're actually Cuban and you're honing your skills there on the island at that time, it was very difficult, going, unless, of course, you got on tour and you were now also touring for the government, because there they would take your money. Like, if you got booked in the States, like, for instance, Celia Cruz, the late, great Celia Cruz,
yes.
okay? God bless her soul, God bless the dead. She would get booked, for instance, in the United States, but she'd have to give the money to the Cuban government. And then they'll give her what they feel she needs to get over during the month, right?
Wow.
And it's like that for a lot of the bands, like Sonora Matancera,
Okay.
and all those, even, Perez Prado and all these guys from back then, Cachao and people like that. And so it's a very tough place to make a dollar. I mean, you can play all over the island and come home with, $1.35 at the end of the night, and you got to feed your family with that. And then you got to get in the ration line the next morning to beat other families there in order to get food before it disappears. And then you got to wait another week until the rations come back from wherever they come from. So my point for saying that is to say that music made more sense, but my father still wanted me to play baseball, and my brother as well. Unfortunately for me, because English was my second language, I was slow in learning and adapting to the new languages and the new ways of America. Luckily for me, when the C average and all that came out in high school, I wasn't able to make the grades in the baseball teams anymore. And luckily for me, hip hop started to come in 1979, 1980, 81.
Who were you listening to? Who were your artists that you looked up to or enjoyed?
Well, I mean, it was a wide array of artists because the house has always been filled with music. Being my dad loved Celia Cruz and the Sonora Matancera and Johnny Pacheco and all these people, Cachao, and so many artists that he would play records of, including anything from Mozart to Bach. He had these records, or Elvis Presley records and stuff like that. But it wasn't until my older sister got into junior high school, she started getting really cool, and learning the ways. So one day she came home with an Isley Brothers record, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. It was a double fold out, and you'd see the Isley Brothers all on stage with the fog machines kicking through the stage. And I think it was the Go For Your Guns album. Staring at that album really showed me like an interest there. But listening to music like Celia Cruz to Isley Brothers, those are different genres. You don't know it at the time, but you're digesting so much. And so I think early on, those were my influences, although I didn't know it at the time. Now, when I get into high school, things start to change. Now I become one of the cool kids. And because I started breakdancing when I first heard hip-hop, I was listening to guys like Curtis Blow, records like These Are the Breaks by Curtis Blow, or Rapper's Delight by Sugar Hill Gang.
Love that song.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
I love it. I play that every morning, just so you know.
Oh, okay.
Every morning. I love that song.
Right on.
When I'm getting ready, it's just one of the coolest songs, yeah.
Yeah, still, you can still sing along to that. Know every word.
Yeah, exactly.
But those were the first early influences of hip-hop music that I was listening to before I chose to pick up a microphone and become one of those guys. That wouldn't happen till later, about 1983, when I first heard Run DMC, Ram LZ, and another guy by the name of Mr. Schick of the Mean Machine. These three records really changed my life. Number one, Mr. Schick of the Mean Machine was the first time I heard a Spanish rap on a record.
Okay.
This is 1982-83. This was a record on the Sugar Hill Gang, the Sugar Hill label out of New York, who also had Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five.
Yes.
And then the Rammellzee would come in, and he would change and kind of teach me how to find a name and incorporate certain facets of his style and incorporate them into my own. And then there was the other group that I mentioned. My goodness, anyway, all these records kind of help mold and shape who I want to start becoming, because as I was breakdancing, I noticed that the moves were getting way difficult. And when a move called the 1990 came out, I was like, that's it. I'm not doing that move. Yeah, because you're upside down, spinning on one hand vertically this way.
I remember that. Okay.
And I didn't like being upside down.
Yeah.
And so I said, I can't do that move. So I think this is where I tap out. So I made a transition to the microphone and writing, started to hone my skills as a writer, and really started to like going to English class, learning definitions and digging through the dictionary was really intriguing to me. And I remember I would always be one of the first ones to finish my definitions and whatnot. And then I would copy the girls the way they wrote. The girls used to write really sexy and really cute.
Yeah.
And really understandable at the same time, really big loopy letters. And I got my penmanship from watching the females. And that's how I write to this day still. But I think the love of writing and starting to create, I didn't know that my family's bloodline was already in me. All those that were already creating on the island and making music, my uncles, my grandfather, my cousins. That's when Pops, my dad, is like, oh no, you're going to make it to the major leagues. You're already being scouted and you're already blah, 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 and I just couldn't make the grade. So I say to those listening, stay in school, get your grades up, and try to do the best you can, because sometimes in life, your next level success could depend on it. I was fortunate. I was one of the lucky ones. Hip hop was there, and I jumped on board. And I took what I knew. I knew how to count, so I know how to count my money, and I knew how to write, so I know how to write my songs. Right? I think English class really helped, to put words together. Although later I would mix English and Spanish, but that all started there. At that time, the high school years. So after the high school years, I started to really hang out in Hollywood and go to Hollywood and try to meet people that were already involved in the industry. And so that's what kind of happened. And little by little, at first the record companies weren't ready for a Spanish rapper.
Was that tough? That they weren't ready for you?
Well, yeah, because see, now it's 1987, and since it hadn't been done since 1981, when Mr. Schick of the Mean Machine does that record, but then they get kicked off the label because they were asking for their royalties and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
Right? So nobody touches Spanish rap until I say, okay, he put a little piece of Spanish in the rap. I'm going to do an entire rap record in Spanish.
Yeah.
And when Delicious Vinyl here in Los Angeles heard that, they gave me a deal instantly.
What was that like when that deal was offered to you? I mean, do you remember that moment?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I remember because it was a tough period in my life because my dad had kicked me out of the house. I believed so much in myself that I didn't want to go get the job, the J word,
Yeah.
Go get the job or work for the man.
So it came at a critical moment.
It came at a critical moment.
And this is where
This is
Mentirosa
where-
was...
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
I get the deal, and they offered me just a single deal for one record.
Okay.
But they gave me a $2,000 check, and I swear to God, I thought I was rich. Oh, my God.
But back then, it was a lot of money.
It was a lot of money in
It's a lot of money.
1987.
Exactly.
So I go out with that money, and I buy myself a 1971 BMW Bavarian
Nice.
with an oil exhaust leak coming through the cabin. But nobody could tell me nothing, man. If you ask me, that was a Rolls Royce. You know what I mean?
That's right. That's right.
So that's where things start to change now, because record companies didn't want to hear it. We shopped it around and we took it to here and there, and nobody wanted the Spanish rap until Delicious Vinyl hears it. Michael Ross and Matt Dyke down there, who are very influential guys. You know, they're the ones who put on Tone Loc and Young MC, and if you remember records like Wild Thing,
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Bust the Move, and
That's
all that
right.
kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, I
So-
grew up on that music.
Well, there you go. So I'm the third guy signed there at Delicious Vinyl in their early days. They had Tone Loc, Young MC, and myself, and we kick off the label pretty strongly because Tone Loc comes out with Funky Cole Medina.
That's right.
Young MC comes out with
What was it?
I believe it was Bust the Move, maybe,
Bust the Move. Yeah, Bust the Move. Right. Yeah.
or Fastest Rhyme
Is it-
at the
okay.
time. Bust the Move wasn't yet. Neither was Wild Thing. Those will all come later.
Those
Then
will come later.
I come with this Spanish rap called Mas Ping. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say it all
Yeah.
because we are on a family show.
Yes.
But it rhymes with chingon. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so we come out to shoot pretty strong. The label is defending itself against Def Jam Records, and
Which was big back then, right?
which
Yeah.
was huge. I mean, you're
Huge.
talking about LL Cool J, the
Yeah.
Beastie Boys, or Public Enemy.
Wow.
So we're holding our own on the West Coast.
I wish she could tell this story tomorrow at an '80s event. What a great story! this is a great '80s like history.
Well, yeah, and I'm very proud to be a part of that. So then we put this record out, and people are loving it, although it's more of a cult classic, and it's hardcore Spanish rap. I'm yelling at you, you know what I mean? Cuando llego a la casa, esto es lo que pasa, empiezo a gozar con toda la raza. But I'm yelling, you know? It does pretty well, but it captures the interest of Capitol Records,
Oh,
who then sends a rep to San Diego State University, where I'm doing a show there on campus, and the rep comes to me and says, "Hey man, we love what you're doing with the Spanish stuff, and Capitol wants to buy you. Here's my business card. Call me on Monday. We want to give you a contract." I'm like, "Well, I'm already signed over at Delicious Vinyl," and that he was like, "Don't worry about that. We're going to buy out your contract."
wow.
And it turns out this guy, his name was Kenny Ortiz, who also happened to be a Afro-Cuban brother like myself, who worked the A&R department at Capitol Records. So I come back home Monday. We were doing a show with Tone Loc, Young MC, and another guy from New York there in San Diego. When we finish, he gives me his business card. I call him on Monday, and sure enough, we set up a meeting to go meet with the big dogs over at Capitol Records. Now, it gets no bigger in terms of record companies in America at that time.
What a moment, huh?
Capitol Records, I mean, we're talking about the Beatles, we're talking about Jimi Hendrix, we're talking about so many
Wow.
legendary people that have come through there. The Jacksons.
I wanted to be
So-
a fly in that room that day
Yeah,
and
so
listen to that whole situation, man.
it was crazy
Wow.
because now they go, well, we're going to buy out your contract from Delicious Vinyl. Delicious Vinyl, luckily for me, needed money to press more Young MC and Tone Loc records. So Capitol offers them somewhere in the neighborhood of $40K or whatever it was, which they needed to press more
Exactly.
records. So they let me spread my wings. In other words, they didn't try to hold me back or say, no, he's our artist and we're going to keep it. If you love him, then we'll
Yeah.
continue pushing him. Instead, it was the total opposite. They let me spread my wings and they did the deal. And that's when we start to really write an album, the Escape from Havana album, which had Mentirosa on there and had the Welcome to My Grooves, the Rhyme Fighters, and all those. It was a very experimental album because I really didn't. I won't say that I didn't know what I was doing. It's just that I had so many different styles within me. So, I mean, we're talking about guaguancó rap and Cuban folklore beats, bilingual, Spanish, rock, hip hop, underground, mainstream. I'm touching every possible angle. So I say it was an experimental album because of that.
Yeah,
I
melting
was very
pot.
well rounded as a rapper.
Yes.
I could do a love ballad or in English or in Spanish, and I prided myself on versatility. And I think that's really why I got that big major deal, 7 album deal.
So, what was it like performing? Everybody who's a fan, who's listening, who's watching, what is it like to be on stage? I know we only got a few minutes, probably about 10 minutes that we got here with Paul, but what was it like when at that peak in your career, you're on stage, and of course, you're on stage all the time now, but what is that feeling like for those of us that don't know, right? It's like, I was watching ESPN and the lady who was interviewing, they were debating on like some stuff, and then she says, I wonder what it's like to win a Super Bowl or a championship. There's some people that don't know that feeling.
Sure.
Can you share that with us? What is that like?
Yeah, I really can, because I can identify with that because, excuse me, early on when you're doing all the greasy little clubs from here to there to get known and raise your popularity, I mean, you can play clubs out in Nogales, with chickens out in front, or you can go do the Casa Camino Real, or you go do the Palladium, the Hollywood Palladium.
Yes.
But I think the more impactful shows came with I got booked to play in Colombia and open up for Air Supply.
Wow.
We're playing big stadiums,
Wow.
soccer stadiums out there. On that tour, it's a 4-city tour. We're doing Bogota, Medellin, Cali, and I forget the last city there.
Just a sea of people.
A sea of people, being an ambassador for all things Latino. For those listening who are really young, look, the best way I can describe it is that you can understand is when I say something like comparable to you today, it would be I was the Bad Bunny of 1990.
That's right.
Okay?
That's right.
But there was nobody else.
Yes.
So I'm eating the game up. I'm all things Latino. There's a lot of pressure on my shoulders to do well, to be now I'm a shining example.
Yeah.
I'm a role model, all these things.
And you're like, I just want to be an artist.
I just want to rap.
I just want to,
I just want to rap.
Yeah.
But
you didn't know that all this responsibility would fall on you.
No. I had no mentor. I didn't know the things that were going to happen.
Yeah.
All the things that are thrown at you. And you're in a whirlwind of getting money, success, becoming an ambassador for hip-hop. You're going to different countries. And I knew we had made it. I had made it when I touched down in Santiago, Chile. And there were over 100 journalists on the tarmac waiting for me to get off the plane.
That's awesome.
And they weren't leaving until everybody got their story. That was traumatizing for me at 21 years old, because the next morning when I woke up, I opened up my hotel door to get my breakfast that was coming in. All the newspapers had already turned their stories in and pressed them, and they were piled up in front of my hotel door. And I'm like, wow. So what we're doing here is we're ambassadoring for hip-hop. Because in a lot of Latin countries, they were still under the impression, like, hip-hop, rap is a black music. Why are you... And they would ask me right on the TV show, like Martes 13 or whatever. Mellow Man, ¿por qué estás haciendo música de morenos? I'm like, yo, wait, tone it down. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I would take the time to educate them and be like, no, hip hop started with blacks and Latinos in the ghettos of the Bronx, New York. Yeah. They were all there together. It just so happens that it was a black DJ, a Jamaican DJ who started it all. But blacks, Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Dominicans were all there as well. And I would educate them. And I think that helped elevate the culture on a global scale, because many countries had never heard hip hop, much less in their own language at that time.
Well, as an ambassador then and an ambassador now, I know that you're doing a mentorship program.
Yes.
Can you share with us some about that mentorship program? Because first and foremost, I want to thank you. You've always been there to support like our fundraisers, whether it's our annual toy drive here at the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. You've been there to perform, and we appreciate that. And then you've been part of our golf tournament, which helps raise money for our scholarship program for our youth chamber. So we appreciate you always being there for us. We really appreciate that. Tell us a little bit about your mentorship program. I know we're in the last 5 or so minutes here.
Okay.
Tell us about the mentorship program you got going on in La Puente right now, right?
Right. Yeah, I got approached by City Councilman David Argudo one day at an event, and he said, "Hey, I'm having an idea of bringing a music program to the city of La Puente. Would you be interested?" And I said, "We could talk about that. Definitely interested." So 3-4 months go by. I never hear from him. One day we're playing a golf tournament. All the boys, Raza Golf and Brandon and everybody. We're all at a
Brandon
golf tournament.
in the house here.
Absolutely, shout out Beezy. Then the phone rings, and I'm about to go tee off, and it's Dave, Councilman Argudo, and he's like, "Are you ready?" I was like, "I was born ready, man. What you talking about?" Well, he said, "Well, you need to create a curriculum, and then we have to get it by City Council." So I called in some great friends, Abby Losis, Bronick Wroblewski, who were friends of mine in the industry, who I knew could help me mold and shape the curriculum aspect of it. We got that down, sat down together, got it down. Then Abby and I proposed it over in City Council. They loved it across the board, from City Mayor Charlie Klinakis. He loved it. City Manager Bob Lindsay blessed it. All the other city councilmen loved it, and they said, we don't have anything like this at all. Thank you, Mellow Man. Let's do it.
Nice.
And so we did we wrote a great proposal, and now we're in our 7th week
Congratulations.
of the 10-week program of mentorship, and
Nice.
it's called the Mellow Man Ace Arts and Edutainment Arts Program.
Nice.
And it's covers La Puente, who's the hub, Hacienda Heights, Avocado Heights, Bassett, and Valinda as well.
Okay.
The San Gabriel Valley.
Nice.
And so what we did was we started to, go visit all the schools in the area, the elementary schools and the high schools, to try to get kids interested in, hey, would you like to learn the arts and, and learn how to rap and play the piano or play a keyboard, create a beat, a track.
Yes.
And we got our first initial intake. We got about 100 kids interested.
Wow.
And so now
so
we're in
cool.
our 7th week, headed towards graduation day and a final performance from all the kids. And just really proud of it. I'm really proud of the program.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for all you're doing. Continue all success. Mellow Man Ace will also be supporting our 1980s flashback fight cancer fundraiser we're doing tomorrow at 701 Restaurant. Thank you again for being part of everything we do in the community.
You got it, John.
We really appreciate it.
No, you've been always very gracious with me. You've been an A+ gentleman. And so anytime I get to feel your energy, your vibe, I'm there, brother. You got good ache, as they say.
Gracias. It means a lot to me. We will see you on the golf course, but first and foremost, we'll see you tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night on stage, absolutely.
With JJ
with
Fat.
JJ Fat. Yeah,
that's right. And Arabian Prince.
Absolutely.
And last week we actually had our friends from Mariachi Divas. She was on the show a couple weeks ago. And they're going to be there actually also performing. They're 2-time Grammy winners. So it's going to be a great event raising money for Chalk Children's Hospital. And so thank you. Thank you so much for all you do in the community. And again, folks, thank you for tuning in. We will see you next week. Again, the Godfather of Latin hip hop.
You got it.
Mr. Mellow Man Ace. Thank you and continue all success.
Thank you.
And we'll see you soon, folks. Have a good one.
Peace.
Well, there you have it. One more good reason to tune in each and every time to meet our community, the Hispanic business community, powered by the Orange County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio, streaming live from our studios here at the University of California, Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center.